The night I first heard the warning, I was alone in my apartment, the kind of quiet that feels heavy and strange. It wasn't just silence, it was something more, like the world had paused and was holding its breath. I remember sitting by the window, staring out at the empty street below, when a sudden chill ran down my spine. The air seemed colder, thicker, almost like it was pressing in on me. That's when I heard it, a faint voice, barely a whisper, but clear enough to send a shiver through my bones. "Don't turn on the light." At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe it was the wind, or my mind playing tricks after watching one too many horror movies. But the voice wasn't coming from outside. It was inside my head, or maybe just outside, hovering right near me, almost like a warning from something unseen. I didn't know what to make of it, but something in me refused to ignore those words. I kept the room dark, my eyes adjusting slowly to the shadows. Every corner of the apartment seemed to stretch out longer than it should, shapes twisting and warping with the faint moonlight sneaking through the curtains. I tried to calm my racing heart, telling myself it was just my imagination, that there was no reason to be scared. But the feeling of being watched grew stronger, like a presence lurking just beyond my sight, waiting for me to slip up and turn on that light. As minutes ticked by, I heard faint noises, soft creaks and whispers, so subtle I wasn't sure if they were real or just my mind conjuring them up. My skin prickled with fear, but I forced myself to stay still, to listen closely to whatever it was trying to tell me. The warning repeated itself in my mind, haunting and urgent: "Don't turn on the light." It wasn't just advice, it felt like a command, a desperate plea from something that wanted to protect me or maybe keep me trapped in the darkness. I remembered the old stories my grandmother used to tell me about spirits that only come alive in the light, shadows that hide terrible secrets. She always said, "Some things are better left unseen." That night, those words echoed in my mind louder than ever. The darkness wasn't just the absence of light, it was alive, watching, waiting. Hours passed like minutes. I lost track of time, my senses sharpening in the darkness. Every small sound became a threat, every flicker of shadow a possible danger. But I refused to break the warning. I refused to turn on the light and invite whatever was out there into my space. When dawn finally started to creep through the window, bathing the room in soft, pale light, the oppressive feeling lifted. The presence, the voice, the chilling silence, they all faded away like a bad dream. But I knew I'd never forget that night, or the warning that saved me. From then on, whenever the darkness calls, I listen carefully. Because some warnings come not to scare you, but to keep you alive. The darkness wasn't just an absence of light that night, it felt like something alive, something moving just beyond my vision. I kept telling myself it was only shadows, tricks of the eye, but deep down, I knew there was more. As I sat alone in my room, the moonlight barely cutting through the thick curtains, the shadows seemed to dance and shift, stretching out like fingers reaching toward me. I could feel their presence, cold and heavy, pressing in from every corner. I tried to stay calm, telling myself I was safe. My hands trembled slightly as I hugged my knees to my chest, my eyes flicking nervously toward the darkest parts of the room. The shadows were thick tonight, thicker than usual, almost solid. At times, I thought I saw shapes move, vague, twisted forms that disappeared whenever I blinked. I knew my mind could be playing tricks, but the unease crawling through me was real. It felt like those shadows knew I was there, watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. The silence around me was broken only by the faint hum of the city outside and my own shallow breathing. But beneath that, there was something else, a subtle rustling, like fabric brushing against something unseen, or whispers just beyond comprehension. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or if the shadows were trying to communicate. My heart hammered in my chest as I forced myself to stay still, trying to listen without panic. Memories of childhood fears flooded back, those stories about creatures that lurked in the dark, feeding on fear and doubt. I used to laugh them off, but now, I wasn't so sure. The darkness was alive in a way I had never experienced before, a shifting, restless presence that refused to be ignored. I wanted to turn on the light, to banish the shadows and feel safe again, but the warning echoed in my mind: "Don't turn on the light." So I stayed frozen, staring into the blackness, feeling like I was part of some strange game where the shadows had all the power. Every time I thought I saw a face, a figure, or a hand, it vanished as if it never existed. The room seemed to close in, the walls breathing with a slow, menacing rhythm. The shadows whispered secrets I couldn't understand, promises I didn't want to hear. Time lost all meaning. Minutes felt like hours as I sat there, trapped between fear and curiosity. I wanted to run, to escape this suffocating darkness, but I also felt drawn to it, like the shadows were calling me closer, inviting me to see what they hid. I fought the urge, knowing that some things are better left unseen, that the darkness holds more than just the night. When the first light of dawn finally seeped through the window, the shadows retreated, dissolving into the corners where they belonged. The oppressive weight lifted, leaving me trembling but alive. I knew I'd never forget the way the shadows moved that night, not just as shapes, but as living things with a will of their own. Even now, when the sun sets and the room There was something in the room with me that night, something I couldn't see, but I knew was there. From the moment I stepped inside and closed the door behind me, an invisible weight settled over the air, thick and suffocating. It wasn't just silence, it was the absence of everything familiar, replaced by a feeling that I was being watched by something unseen. I tried to shake the thought, telling myself it was just nerves, but my skin prickled with a cold awareness that I couldn't ignore. I moved slowly, every sound I made seeming loud in the heavy quiet. My eyes darted around the room, searching for anything out of place, but there was nothing. No shadow, no shape, just the familiar furniture bathed in the faint glow of the moonlight. Yet, I felt eyes on me. Not human eyes, cold and judging, but something darker, something ancient and patient. It was like the air itself held a secret, and I was the only one who could sense it. I sat down, trying to calm the rapid beating of my heart. The feeling didn't lessen. Instead, it grew, subtle and insistent, wrapping around me like a cold breath on the back of my neck. I wanted to call out, to break the silence and force whatever it was to reveal itself, but my voice caught in my throat. What if that presence didn't want to be seen? What if speaking only invited it closer? The room felt alive, every creak and whisper magnified in the stillness. I told myself it was the house settling, the wind outside, anything but the truth, that something unseen shared the space with me. The feeling of being watched twisted into a suffocating pressure, making it hard to breathe. I tried to focus on something else, my phone, a book, anything, but my attention kept snapping back to the invisible presence that lurked just beyond perception. There were moments when I felt a shift, a movement that shouldn't have been possible without a shape or a shadow. A sudden chill, a brush of air against my skin, a faint scent that wasn't mine. I was convinced I wasn't alone, even though nothing crossed my line of sight. The presence was there, patient and silent, as if waiting for me to acknowledge it. I thought about leaving, about fleeing into the safety of the night outside. But something held me back. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was curiosity, an unbearable pull to understand what was there in the dark with me. I wondered if it was a ghost, or something worse. A part of me wanted to reach out, to connect with this unseen presence, but I was too scared of what that might mean. Hours passed like seconds. The oppressive feeling didn't ease until the first light of dawn touched the room, softening the shadows and lifting the weight from the air. The presence, whatever it was, seemed to vanish with the darkness. I was left trembling and exhausted, knowing I had come face to face with something beyond my understanding. Even now, when I'm alone in the quiet, I feel that presence lingering just beyond sight, a reminder that not. It was late, later than I usually stay awake, and the house was swallowed in complete darkness. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, the warning still echoing in my mind, "Don't turn on the light." I'd tried to ignore it at first, brushing it off as a trick of my imagination, but as the night deepened, a creeping dread settled inside me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was there, watching me. Suddenly, I heard it, a faint sound, like soft footsteps on the hardwood floor outside my bedroom door. My breath caught, and my heart hammered against my ribs as the noise grew closer, slow and deliberate. I wanted to convince myself it was nothing, maybe just the house settling, but every instinct screamed that something else was moving toward me. The darkness around me felt thicker, alive even, as if it had taken form and was closing in. I stayed frozen, too terrified to move, too scared to call out. The footsteps stopped just outside my door. I could feel the presence waiting there, patient, like a predator savoring the moment before it strikes. Then came a whisper. It was so soft I almost didn't hear it, but the words sliced through the silence like a blade, "Don't turn on the light." My skin crawled as the voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was not human, cold, hollow, dripping with menace. Fear overwhelmed me, but there was also a strange compulsion, a pull to stand and confront whatever was out there. I slowly rose from the bed, every muscle trembling, and took a cautious step toward the door. The air grew colder, every breath visible like tiny clouds in front of me. My hand hovered over the doorknob, heart pounding so loud I was sure it would give me away. Before I could make a move, the door creaked open just a sliver, revealing nothing but an empty hallway bathed in darkness. I couldn't see anything, but the feeling of being watched intensified, and I sensed movement just beyond the edge of sight. The shadows shifted unnaturally, stretching and twisting in impossible ways, like living things. Suddenly, a cold rush of air brushed past me, and a whisper echoed again, this time closer, right in my ear. "Don't turn on the light." Panic surged through me, and I stumbled backward, heart racing out of control. The door slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. I collapsed onto the bed, trembling and breathless, eyes fixed on the dark corners of the room. For what felt like hours, I sat there, paralyzed with fear, listening to the silence that was anything but silent. The presence lingered, unseen but undeniable, a terrifying reminder that some things live in the dark, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal themselves. When dawn finally broke, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the room felt empty again. But I knew that night, that encounter, would haunt me forever. Some warnings aren't meant to be ignored, and some darkness holds horrors we are never meant to face. The nightmares started the moment I closed my eyes that night. No matter how hard I tried to escape them, they pulled me under like quicksand, dragging me deeper into a world where shadows twisted into terrifying shapes and unseen voices whispered threats I couldn't understand. When I woke, gasping and drenched in sweat, the darkness in my room felt heavier, almost as if the nightmares had followed me back from some other place, clinging to the edges of my vision. I knew I couldn't stay there. The air felt thick and suffocating, every shadow seeming to hide something watching me. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, but the screen's light felt too harsh, too revealing. I remembered the warning, "Don't turn on the light." I swallowed the panic rising in my chest and forced myself to sit up in the darkness, trying to steady my breathing. The nightmares weren't just dreams anymore. They were real, creeping into my waking life, threatening to consume me whole. I had to find a way out, a way to escape the grip of the terror that held me. The first step was accepting the fear instead of running from it. I closed my eyes again, but this time, I focused on my breath, letting each inhale and exhale anchor me to the present. I told myself the nightmares were just shadows, illusions born from my mind's deepest fears. But the darkness around me remained alive, restless, and I felt that same unseen presence lingering just beyond reach. I got out of bed slowly, the floor cold beneath my feet, and moved toward the window. The city outside was quiet, bathed in pale moonlight that didn't touch my room. I hesitated, fingers grazing the curtain before pulling it aside. The night was still and calm, but I felt exposed, vulnerable. The nightmares had trapped me here, in this liminal space between fear and safety, and escaping meant confronting them head-on. I remembered the stories my grandmother told me about darkness. How it was both a place of danger and refuge, a place where one could lose themselves or find a hidden strength. I took a deep breath and whispered into the silence, "I'm not afraid." The words felt strange, almost foreign, but they echoed inside me like a promise. Slowly, I began to walk through my apartment, eyes adjusting to the shadows, learning to see without light. The nightmare's whispers faded as I moved, their hold weakening. The darkness wasn't just an enemy, it was a test, a mirror reflecting my deepest fears and my will to overcome them. By the time dawn crept through the windows, washing the room in soft gold, I felt different. The nightmares hadn't disappeared completely, but I had learned to live with them, to face the darkness without flinching. I knew the road ahead would be hard, but I was ready to fight, to escape the nightmares not by running away, but by standing my ground in the quiet, in the shadows, where fear and courage collide.